What's growing on, gardeners? Today's video is going to be all about growing my favorite easy to grow cold hardy root vegetable, the carrot. But there is a catch. If you have grown carrots before, there is a good chance you have been growing them wrong your entire life. It's true. On today's video, I'm going to show you the one trick that will produce the sweetest carrots that you have ever grown. This is by far my favorite way to grow carrots.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check out my Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom apparel and gear.
Carrots are one of the most widely consumed vegetables there are. They're one of the first things we ever eat as a child the moment we get teeth, and we eat them all the way until our teeth fall out in our old age. But whether we are 18 months old or 108 years old, one thing is consistently true. The carrots we grow at home in our gardens are way better than anything we get at a grocery store, as long as we follow a very specific rule. And that rule is we have to time out our planting so our carrots mature in the cold weather. That is the most important rule that we can follow when growing carrots. And this is the mistake that, unfortunately, so many different gardeners make. Carrots naturally contain a blend of sugar, starch, and fiber, but the proportions of each that the carrot produces is highly dependent on temperatures. You see, the warmer the weather that the carrots mature in, the starchier the carrots will be, but the cooler the weather that the carrots mature in, the more sugar they will produce. So basically, the amount of sugar that a carrot produces is inversely proportional to the temperature. The cooler it is outside, the sweeter your carrots will be. And this is the problem that so many gardeners face because they mistime their carrot planting. Unfortunately, most gardeners tend to be way more active in the garden in spring than they are in the fall. And for that reason, most gardeners that plant carrots out in their garden do so in late winter, early spring. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with this. In most climates, carrots can grow 365 days a year because they're cold hardy all the way down to around 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and they can tolerate heat pretty well as long as they are provided some shade. But the problem with sowing your carrots in early spring and harvesting them in the summer is, well, when you pick your carrots in the heat, they're basically going to be the least flavorful they can possibly be because they will have the lowest amount of sugar and the highest amount of starch and fiber. In fact, here where I live on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, Zone 8B, I can only harvest carrots up until about the end of May because once I get to June, July, and August here, it's so hot that the carrots basically taste terrible. They're so high in fiber and starches that they're basically like chewing on balsa wood. They taste absolutely terrible and they have no sugar content at all. Now, if you live in a place with much milder summers than I have, you have more flexibility for when you can harvest carrots out into the summer. But the point I'm trying to make is, if you are not sowing a crop of carrots in late summer so you can harvest them in late fall, early winter when it is really cold out, you are missing out on the best tasting, sweetest carrots you will ever grow. So, here's my one trick for the sweetest tasting carrots you have ever had. Time your sowing of your carrots so they will mature when it's really cold out. That's it. That's really the one trick. But in practice, it's a little bit different. You see, the way I like to actually sow my carrots is continually throughout the year. Like I said, I can harvest carrots pretty much 365 days a year here in North Carolina, although I do scale back in the dead of summer because they don't taste very good. So what I like to do is, starting late summer, I like to sow a row of carrots roughly every 4 weeks or so. Nothing crazy, just enough so I will have a continual harvest of carrots all the way up until the end of May, the beginning of June, when the nights are still fairly cool enough that I can get a decent tasting carrot. But if you're one of those people that like to sow a really large crop, well, absolutely make sure that you grow fall carrots above and beyond any other carrots, because the fall carrots that you will harvest in late fall, early winter are the best tasting carrots that you will get. And today is, well, it's the first week of September, so now is the ideal time for most people to plant their carrots, because carrots planted now are probably going to mature at some point in late November, possibly December, when they are going to taste fantastic thanks to the cool days and chilly nights. So now I'm going to show you how to sow those carrots for best success and maximum germination. Now, before you sow your carrot seeds, it is very important that you choose varieties that are appropriate for your garden. Carrots can grow as short as 3 or 4 inches for the smaller varieties to as long as 12 inches, maybe even longer. And carrots need very light, loose, loamy soil to grow in. If your soil is very hard and compacted, they will be stunted, or they'll come out really funny looking or split or come out all kinked on you. You want your soil to be very loose and light and fast draining. So if you're growing your carrots in a simple single level raised bed like I am that's only about 7 inches deep, you don't want to source yourself a carrot variety that's a foot long, because they're going to hit the hard ground in the bottom and you're going to get funky looking carrots that aren't going to look very appetizing. If you want to grow a very long carrot, make sure that you have a very tall raised bed that can accommodate that carrot, or if you're growing the carrots directly in ground, that your soil is light and loamy enough that it can accommodate a very long carrot so you don't get something funky and kinked and cracked. Now, that being said, if you're interested in all different types of carrots, I'll place some links down in the video description for seeds that have carrots of all different sizes. That way, no matter what your soil condition is, you'll have different lengths of carrot that you can source, whether you need something small, medium, or large. But I have good news. If you don't have deep raised beds, or if your native soil isn't light and loamy enough for long carrots, you could always get yourself some grow bags. These 20-gallon fabric grow bags are something like 16 to 18 inches deep. So these are going to be more than deep enough to accommodate carrots. And I'm actually going to show you how to sow the carrot seeds in this grow bag right now, because I already have lots of carrots growing in my deep raised bed that I will show you how they progressed later in this video. The carrots I'm growing in this video are a Nantes variety, and they get about 7 to 8 inches long. So these are probably perfect for most backyard gardeners. They're a good mid-sized carrot for all-purpose eating. Now, when you sow carrots, the most important thing you need to know is that they can't be sown deeply. If you cover them too deeply, they won't germinate. And carrot seeds in and of themselves have a pretty poor germination rate. So the first thing you want to do is take your hand and lightly press the soil down, just to make sure you get some type of firm base. Because if the soil is too loamy, every time it rains, it's going to scatter all about the place. Now, when you sow in a raised bed, you're just going to take your finger and you're going to draw a light, straight trench about 1/8 of an inch deep. That's all you're going to do. But since we are growing in a container right here, I'm going to take a different approach. You could either sow your carrots chaos gardening style, where you'll basically just take like a handful of carrot seeds and sprinkle them randomly around the grow bag, and then once they germinate, you can just thin them so each carrot has about 1 to 1.5 square inches to grow in. Or you can dig trenches, or you could put circle-like rings. So the way I'm going to do this is, I'm going to take my finger and I'm just going to draw some very light trenches, like you see here. And I'm going to probably space the trenches something like, I don't know, 4 inches apart. This doesn't have to be an exact science. You just have to get things close enough, and then we can thin them all out later. Then I'm going to take the carrot seeds and I'm going to pour them in my hand. And we want to use a technique called overseeding to plant our carrot seeds, which means we're going to put more seeds than we need in each trench. And the reason why we do this is because carrot seeds are going to have fairly low germination rates. So we want to sow something like 4 to 5 times more carrots than we actually need, because we're going to assume that more than half of them are not going to germinate. And even if they do, you're going to have issues with things like pill bugs or mealy bugs or other little creepy crawlies in the soil, where they're going to eat a lot of the little seedlings. So sometimes, even if you get decent germination, you may have to come by and re-sow a little bit here and there, because some of your plants may have magically gone bye-bye. Now, we can take our fingers and lightly pinch together the trench, and again, remember, we are barely covering these just with about 1/8 of an inch of soil. And then when everything has been, all the little trenches have been backfilled, we want to go with our hands and just tamp down everything again. Alternatively, if you wanted to chaos garden and just sprinkle carrot seeds on top like you would Parmesan cheese on a bowl of spaghetti, you could just take some potting mix and you can just sprinkle that on top of the seeds when you're done, sort of like what I'm doing right here. That is another acceptable way of sowing carrot seeds. And then when this is all said and done, we are just going to take a watering wand and we are going to lightly water the seeds in, but be careful not to overwater because we don't want to blow the seeds away and disturb our trenches. Now let's talk about fertilizing our carrots. The cardinal sin of growing carrots is over-fertilizing them, because if you give them too much fertilizer, particularly nitrogen, you will get nice big green carrot tops and puny underdeveloped roots. One of the worst things you can do is give your carrots things like water-soluble fertilizers, like really strong 20-20-20 or lots of fish emulsion, things that I generally love to use in my garden, but that is not what we want to do with our carrots. We want them to grow low and slow like we are cooking a brisket. So all I'm going to use is a basic all-purpose balanced fertilizer, something around a 555 NPK. This one right here is a 453 NPK. That's perfect for carrots. I'm going to amend my soil with this fertilizer right now, and then I am not going to give it any more fertilizer until they're done. I'm going to let them just truck along slowly, being trickle fed by limited amounts of nutrients. And that is the real key to getting nice big carrots. It's to basically not give them a whole lot of food. Otherwise, you're going to get those big greens and small carrots. So literally, all I'm going to do is sprinkle probably 2 handfuls of organic all-purpose fertilizer, maybe a little bit more because I have smaller hands, in this grow bag. If I were planting these in a trench, I would simply sprinkle this organic fertilizer evenly across the top of the trench. Then I am just going to water in this fertilizer to facilitate the breakdown, and that is really all I'm going to do in terms of feeding these carrots until I harvest them in about 2 to 3 months. Aside from that, the only thing we really need to do is to just keep the soil evenly and lightly moist so the carrot seeds can germinate. Because the carrot seeds are sown so shallow, if the top layer of that soil dries out, they are not going to germinate. So pretty much every day, unless it rains, we're going to have to come out and lightly water the top layer of that soil until we start seeing germination. Remember, we are keeping things lightly moist. We are not trying to drown our soil and keep things wet. That can lead to the seeds rotting, which is a whole issue unto itself. Aside from that, you should start seeing germination in as little as 7 days, maybe 7 to 10 days, or if you're sowing your carrot seeds in the dead of winter, they can take as long as 2 weeks to germinate. But again, this is the first week of September. I'll expect to see some germination in about 7 days, with total germination in about 10 to 14 tops. And what you see right here is a row of carrots I sowed about 4 weeks ago. So again, that's about 1 to 1.5 weeks to germinate, and then 2.5 to 3 weeks of growth. And yes, carrots do take a while to grow when they get started, but once they eventually grab hold, they really get going. So right now, they're still kind of in the spindly phase. I just overhead watered them, which knocked them down, and they're just starting to stand back up again. But once they fully stand up and they kind of lose this wiry form, I'm going to start thinning them so there's about 1 to 1.5 inch of separation between each carrot. And we'll wait again until they start standing straight up so I can find out which of these carrot seedlings are the strongest, and then I'll pull the weaklings, the runts of the litter, and let the strongest ones continue to grow for the best possible carrot root development. Over here you can see some carrot seeds that are about 7 to 10 days behind the first sowing. Again, this was an area where I got a little infestation of pill bugs and they plucked out a lot of the original carrot seedlings. See, there's a couple right there. So I had to re-sow this section of trench right here, and that's why you see much larger carrots right here and then a big gap where these carrots are coming up. So these carrots are about a week and a half behind these, but that's not a bad thing because that means I'll have a more staggered harvest. So when these come to maturity, I'll be able to harvest these carrots, and then about a week to 2 weeks behind that will be these carrots right there. So sometimes things work out. So, in summary, when planting your carrots, time them so they mature when the weather is still going to be cool for maximum sugar production. Continuously sow them periodically throughout the cool season. That way you have a never-ending harvest of carrots. Make sure you overseed your trenches because germination rates are going to be poor. Don't over-fertilize so you get nice big root development. And if you see any gaps in the trench as things germinate, just re-sow that. Aside from that, that's really all you need to know when it comes to growing carrots. And that right there is my trick for the sweetest carrots you have ever tasted. Sometimes these tricks aren't really all that complicated. Sometimes they're really simple, basic, and they make a lot of sense. So I hope you got a lot out of this video, and I hope it motivated you to grow some carrots this late summer or early fall into the fall and winter. They are going to be one of the easiest things you have ever grown in your vegetable garden. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring the notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. Like I said earlier in the video, I placed direct links down in the video description to some seeds if you're interested in different varieties of carrots in all different lengths and sizes. For everything I use in real life to grow carrots, I place direct links to them in the video description as well. For everything else I use in real life in my yard and garden, that is all linked in my Amazon storefront. So expand the video description, click on the Amazon storefront link, and you will see everything I use in real life. And while you're down there, please consider checking out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support my channel. I just released a whole bunch of new custom homemade designs. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. This is what it's like walking Dale when he gets lost in a scent. When he decides he wants to be on a scent, there is no moving him. Have you ever heard the old philosophical question, what happens when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force? Well, you get a Dale, because when he doesn't want to move, he's an immovable object, and then when he wants to get off that scent, he is unstoppable. We have a pretty nice little evening right here going for our walk, but come on, Dale. No, we're not crossing the street. We're not crossing the street. His friend's house is over there. Does Daly want to cross? You want to go see if your friends are at home? Okay, there's no cars. Let's cross. He knows where everybody in the neighborhood lives.